we peaked when it comes to music production and mixing music in the 80s. There was such a huge amount of passion and such a huge respect for the craft back then. And don't get me wrong. Hello there, girls and boys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna be analyzing a song from one of my favorite records ever. The song in question is Poison Arrow from the fantastic album that is called The Lexicon of Love by ABC. And just as a fun fact, this album is part of my secret trinity when it comes to best sounding records ever. And I always use those three albums, which is of course The Lexicon of Love, Eye in the Sky by Alan Parsons Project, and Asia by Steely Dan, as the way to know if I like or dislike a set of speakers, headphones or converters. And I also use those to get used to the sound of a room because of how well, due to the quality of the mix, but also because I know them like the back of my palm. So if you want to see more about this fantastic record and analyze the song with me, let's do it. But before we go, if this is the first time on the channel, I welcome you, because in here we analyze the music that we love from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer, using language that everybody can understand, in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production, songwriting, and music appreciation. So if this is your jam, let's rock and roll. So here you go, girls and boys, Poison Arrow by ABC.
Just what to do or where to keep it. Then I say I love you, foul a situation. Hey girl, I thought we were the right combination. Who broke my heart? You did, you did. Oh, to the target, blame Cupid, Cupid. You think you're smart, stupid, stupid. Shoot that poison arrow to my heart. Shoot that poison arrow.
Super funky, right? This song is fun to listen to. I love it for that very reason. Look, girls and boys, this album, as I stated during the introduction to this video, it's one of my sacred trilogy when it comes to great mixes. I always use those three albums to refer to whenever I am listening to a new set of speakers, or I am inside of a new room on which I'm going to be working on, or I get a new pair of headphones. Why is that? I consider this album alongside Eye in the Sky by Alan Parsons Project and Asia by Steely Dan as the quintessential best productions ever and the best mixes ever. That's totally up for debate, but in my humble opinion, those albums showcase greatness and the best a mix can be. And The Lexicon of Love, it's one of those records because of how extremely well used the stereo field is. For those of you who are new to terminology, stereo fields stand for the separation of instruments across the left and the right of your system, okay? And the use of the center that happens when both of those signals clashes together, creating what is known as the phantom center, okay? What do we got in the center? Bass and kick drum. And these, tell me if I'm wrong, but this is clearly a bass-driven track. The super fun bass line, it's what keeps the song together. And it's actually the main driving force behind it. It's bigger than the vocals, actually. And you can hear how loud the bass is when compared to their instruments in the mix. Why? Well, it's because it's that prominent. I was pointing at the beginning of this, or at the beginning of the song, through the use of the stereo analyzer that you have somewhere around here, how well spread out, particularly the sound of the piano and the synthesizer playing some of the notes and chords, were distributed across the stereo spectrum. Very well done. leaving room in the center for the bass, the kick drum, and the vocals, being the driving force of the track. Now, what do you think about the singing? I find it to be fun. Especially that fart section. It's so fun. It feels kind of corny and cheesy, but in the best of ways, and gives this theatrical element to the album and to the song that is quite fun to listen to. I always laugh when that section kicks in, but not because it sucks, because it's so cool. It's so fun, and it's kind of lighthearted, if you wish. But I love the great use of effects on the vocals. Pay attention to them. And also, this being a relic from the dark age of technology, aka the 80s, it has plenty of the 80s, how can I put it? Well, canons, or all of those super cliche sounds that are part of the 80s. One of them is the use of reverb on the snare, which sounds like this. Look, I even used a snare to recreate the sound. And that's known as, well, it has plenty of reverb or some voice. And depending on how it's used, you can create that super sound that it's super from the 80s. And I love it. I find it to be quite full of character, and you know what I mean. It has plenty of personality, and it's a sound. It might be dated because everybody was doing it back in the day. And now from this perspective, well, you can see that everybody was doing it back in the day. But it has its charm. Also, these songs kind of have this 80s David Bowie sound to it, don't you think? Let me go think about that. Okay, let's continue listening to the track, because after the next time we meet in this discussion, we're going to be analyzing the mix, and this is a great mix. So here we go. Let's continue.
In symbols, no tempo in drums. Love on arrival, she comes when she comes. Right on the target, but wide of the mark. What I thought was fire was only the spark. The sweetest melody is an unheard refrain. So lower your sights. Yeah, but raise your aim, raise your aim. Broke my heart, you did. Go to the target, and Cupid. You think you're smart, stupid. Shoot that poison arrow to my heart. Shoot that poison arrow. Shoot that poison arrow to my heart. Shoot that poison arrow.
I'm gonna stop it here because the song gets super cool and interesting afterwards, and I want to discuss the concept of the mix with you right now. Welcome back, girls and boys, to Decibel, the tool that we use to analyze music through the use of a visual medium. And in here we got two different sections. The first one, of course, is our frequency analyzer, and in here we got 20 Hz all the way down to 20,000 Hz. The highest we can hear is human beings, the highest we can hear is human beings, and the lowest we can hear is human beings. And yes, this is a great mix all the way through, because we got a very, very, very great representation of everything when it comes to the frequency range. For those of you who don't know what you're looking at, let me explain. You got this white line over here, and this white line represents the highest point in volume of each of the frequencies within the human range spectrum. And this section is the lows, and you can see here the bump that represents the kick and the bass together. It's not overly hyped. Sometimes we have seen kicks going way louder than this, and this is one of the reasons why this album feels the way it does. It's not bombastic, yet it feels so pristine and so well done. Let's say that this is like a properly cooked meal with the right amount of ingredients. Not too much of anything, just the right amount. And that's the reason why it feels so well presented or well done. That's something that has been missing in the last few decades. Why is that? Well, because louder sells more records. That's a fact. And this section tends to be overhyped because in the low range is where we find, using musical terminology, not musical yet, not technical terminology, that's where we find the punchiness and the excitement and the heaviness of a track. And yeah, louder that section is, the more exciting it becomes, or at least it's understood by our human ears. But in here we see a very mild yet pronounced enough low end that gives the record this vibe and feel. Also, you see that it's not harsh. We don't have an overly hyped high end, but we got a good representation of the mid highs. That's where you find the cymbals, and also some of the sylvans from the singing, and of course the high register instruments such as the highest notes played by the piano, which is fantastic across the record. And if you happen to know the name of the bass player and the piano player, please let me know, because those guys are killing it in this record. And also you got the some of the other elements such as the brass and even the rest of the synthesizers that are part of the song. One of the things that I like to point out is that this version that we're listening to at this very moment, as you can see on the screen right now, is the version or the mix done by Steven Wilson. For those of you who don't know, Steven Wilson is one of my favorite music producers and composers ever. He is the mastermind behind the band called Porcupine Tree, one of my favorite bands ever. And he has proven himself to be a very good mixing engineer. And he's starting to break ground in the Atmos mixing thing. Atmos is the atmospheric stuff that you see everywhere on your Apple devices. And it's starting to get momentum. I have my own thoughts regarding Atmos, so if you want me to share those with you, please let me know in the comment section down below. But he was commissioned to work on the Atmos version of this album, and funnily enough, the people, the fans of this album, they were clamoring for the release of Steven Wilson's take on the distribution and sound and mix of the album, but on a stereo fashion, because of how great the dynamic range on the Atmos mix that he did was was reflected on the speakers. And there you got it. We got the stereo version of it. Speaking of dynamic range, let's analyze it together. Over here, girls and boys, we got the second section of our analyzer, and this is where we're going to be discussing and displayed to us is the loudness or the dynamic range across the different sections of the track that we have listened to. This blue blob represents the loudness of our track depending on the position of our playhead. And the higher it gets, the louder that section was at that very point in time. And this, you can see, this is the introduction of the track. But see how little by little the momentum is developed. Up until the point on which we got introduced to the fantastic bass and drum marriage. And you see that the song, progressively speaking, kept the same momentum, the same level of intensity, only for it to build up for the dramatic drop or the dramatic delivery of the chorus. Oof. That, girls and boys, that's where the sauce and the money is gonna be found in music production. I always put this amount of stress or amount of importance to dynamic range because by playing around with your composition, your instruments, your arrangement, and of course the mixing process, you can deliver a higher level of intensity and dynamism and emotional delivery on your audience. Because the louder a signal is, for whatever reason, our human brains feels and understands it to be more exciting. It gets much more exciting the louder a section is. The thing is that if everything is loud, everything feels boring and it's the same. So you need to play with those moments. And in here we are, once again, dealing with a very beautifully done and expertly crafted song, on which you can see that the most important parts of the song, which is the chorus, is where the fun happens, is the loudest. Now let me take you to second verse. And you'll see that it went back, obviously, because you need to develop the momentum once again. And I can assure you that while the track was playing, you weren't aware that this was happening. Super well done. And again, when it's not visible, it's when it hits you the hardest, because you are so immersed in the song, you're actually putting attention to wherever is happening from your speakers, coming out of your speakers, that you're immersed into it. Excellent. Let's listen to the rest of the song because, in my opinion, the next section is my favorite. Let's hit it. Here we go.
thought you loved me, but it seems you don't care.
I care enough to know I can never love you.
You broke my heart. You did, you did. Bow to the target. You think you're smart. Right from the start when you knew we would part. Shoot that poison arrow to my heart. Shoot that poison arrow. Shoot that poison arrow to my heart. Shoot that poison arrow. Shoot that poison arrow. Shoot that poison arrow.
That's the best way to finish off a track such as this one, don't you think? This section, the very ending, even though it repeats itself, it's just bringing back the choruses. It's done in such a clever way that, let me show you this. Once again, we're going to be hitting the screen and see, this is exactly what happened. Once I press play, the song began once again quietly, but this is the gigantic bump when those super big, bombastic, loud as F toms kicked in and brought our attention back to the track, just helping the song to deliver a heavier load of emotion on us, but also it developed a much higher sense of intensity. The stakes were raised during that particular section. It got higher and much more intense. Oof, well done. Just for the track to go back to the loudest point or the cruise level, if you wish, volume that was used during the choruses. Such a great way to finish off the track. You only use this gigantic bump to attract your attention. This reminds me of one of the. This also happens in this song by Kate Bush, Running Up That Hill. They do something similar. I even have an analysis somewhere on the screen that you should have access to right now, and I love when they do that. That's once again one of the reasons why I think we peaked when it comes to music production and mixing music in the 80s. There was such a huge amount of passion and such a huge respect for the craft back then. And don't get me wrong, we're still dealing with great mixers and great sounding records. But I think a good chunk of what makes music so exciting has been lost in the last few years, the last few decades. And maybe it's because of how easy it is or accessible it has become. The whole thing about being able to record your own music in your bedroom. Look, I started off thanks to that. I'm not gonna say that that's a bad thing. The issue, I think, is that we lost the respect that the craft requires due to it being so accessible now to us. That's just a piece of, it's a conversation starter. I would like to see your opinion regarding that because I think that's a huge point of content at this stage when it comes to music production. And what do you think of the record, by the way? I kind of derailed for a few minutes there, but the song is fantastic. It's a fun, non-apologetic track that it's all about bringing the audience back to the concert, delivering energy and having a great time. The performance out of every single one of the performers, just off the charts. It's a fantastic sounding record, filled to the brim with excellence everywhere. I please encourage every single one of you to listen to this album from start to finish. It's as funky as this one, okay? So the entire album is like very, very fun, funky stuff that if you're a true metalhead, you might find it to be a little bit on the pop side because it's a pop record. But it's a very good one at it. And I totally recommend you to listen to it. It's gonna blow your head off. You'll see. It's that good. And if you happen to like Peter Gabriel, who else? David Bowie from the 80s, Kate Bush, you're gonna like this one. I assure you that you're gonna love it if you haven't heard this one before. And I stated at the beginning of this analysis, this is part of my trilogy of albums that I always refer to when it comes to listening to a new set of speakers or headphones because of how great the mix is. And this version, this Steven Wilson remix, I think is the best out there, in my opinion. But please let me know, especially those of you who happen to be audiophiles, because this is one of those audiophile records. So please let me know what you think about the album and this mix in particular. So girls and boys, if you like this kind of content and you want to support this channel, the best way to do it is by listening to music on Apple Music or Spotify. That totally sounds nothing like this. And also by subscribing and joining us on Instagram and X, because that's the best way for you to get in touch with us in a much more personal basis. Now girls and boys, the only thing left to be said is that, of course, I always have to remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about. Remember that I will see you when I see you.